online, and so I'd like to advise everyone that we are recording the meeting. We are also live streaming to the community. For the purposes of the recording and also just running this meeting, if you could use your hand up section, I'll just show you, so I can just see you. Hopefully I can see you. Yes, good. I'll be able to see your hand up now. Thank you for that. So at the moment, we have a few people not present. I'm just noting they may come on soon. So I'm noting Councillor Sherlock, I think he's an apology. But
that's correct, Lord Mayor.
I'm also noting that Councillor Fox, Councillor Coates and Alderman Barakis are yet to join.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I just have spoken to Alderman Barakis. He's having a few connection issues. Okay. So we're working on that now.
Sure, no worries. Okay, but we do have quorum, so we can proceed. In recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which the City of Hobart was built, and acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania. The confirmation of our minutes of the 30th of January, would someone like to move those? Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dutta. All those, any objections or dissent to the minutes being passed? There being none, that's passed unanimously. Transfer of agenda items. Are there any items that anyone would like to suggest be transferred? Alderman Briscoe.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. We have a closed item on the priorities for the federal election. I can't see why that couldn't be debated in the open, unless I'm convinced otherwise by our CEO.
CEO, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's certainly the intention for Council to consider this in closed, with a view then to releasing this to the public. The reason that it's closed in the first instance is to allow officers and Council the time to put together a comprehensive communication strategy to make sure that we leverage as best we can the sort of federal government campaign priorities, which is why it's not been released in the public agenda at this stage, because it is something, one, that we're wanting to Council to consider and provide feedback to, and secondly, as I said, Lord Mayor, to ensure that we put our best foot forward in terms of a communications approach and release certain elements as you would with any normal sort of campaign leading into a federal or state election. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Kelly. Look, I'm not totally convinced, but in the interest of time, I think I won't move a motion to move that into open.
Thank you. We'll move on now to, I don't have any communications from the chair. Item 4 is notification of council workshops, and there was a council workshop on the 8th of February. It was the City Deal Metro Plan. So it doesn't say how many elected members were present, which we often do, but I think it was most elected members were there at that one. So we now move on to public question time, and we do have some public questions. So I think the first one I have here is from Selby Cooper. So if Selby could ask their question.
Through you, Lord Mayor, doesn't look like they're in attendance at the moment.
Okay, no worries. So I'll put that one aside until they turn up, or if they don't, they can come next time and ask it. So the next one, and these are in the order of when they were received. The next one, one question I think is, or two questions, is Mr. Trenton Hoare. Trenton, would you like to ask your questions?
Yes, thank you, and good evening, Council. My first question for this evening, does the council have intentions to implement concession discounts for the e-scooters, as well as for state school students, making them more accessible to those who require the use of these transports?
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Would you like to ask your second question as well?
Yep. And my second question, are the Tasmanian and Commonwealth governments liaison with the City of Hobart Council regarding to implementing safety recommendations that were made by Why Not at the City Infrastructure Committee meeting, which was held on the 2nd of the 2nd, 2022. Ideas such as the use of an on-time bus tracker app, better street lighting, and my personal view of adding security cameras at bus stops and bus malls.
So thank you, Mr. Hoare. We are going to take your questions on notice and provide you with a written response, because we'll be able to give you a bit more detail with some more time to prepare that. A copy of the response will be published on the future council agenda, and you'll also be sent a copy of the responses directly. So thank you so much for your interest, and thank you for your questions today.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
So I also have questions from Ms. Louise Elliott. Ms. Elliott, if you'd like to ask your questions.
Thank you. I have 3 questions, if that's okay. I'll keep them brief. My first question is, several council actions have recently been launched under the guise of being a trial, such as the parklets in Elizabeth Street, Speaker's Corner, and the release of 600 e-scooters onto our streets and footpaths. Without the basis upon which the success of these trials is being publicly available, it can be easy to assume that these actions are introductions rather than genuine trials. Can the council please commit to making the criteria upon which the success or continuation of any trial will be based, and who will be making this assessment, publicly available before or upon the launch of a trial? That's my first question.
Thanks, Ms. Elliott. Would you like to ask your 2 additional questions? Because we're going to take them on notice anyway.
Okay, thank you. My next question relates to short stay visitor accommodation. From observation, it appears that some councillors hold the view that properties operating as short stay visitor accommodation are more detrimental to residential amenity from a noise, parking and traffic perspective than other residential property. Can the council please advise if it views the impact on residential amenity from short stay properties from a noise, traffic and parking perspective to be better, the same or worse than residential owner occupied or long-term rental properties? And what, if any, evidence it relies on the basis for this view? And the second part of that question is, can the council also please confirm that while its records state that 481 short stay visitor accommodation permits have been issued, that this does not automatically mean that 481 properties are currently or have been previously or will in the future be operating as a short stay property? And my final question, the response timeframes to public questions appears to be somewhat random, with the questions that the council or councillors may find awkward or sensitive being responding to, taking an extended period to reply, such as a question I'm waiting on a response to from 60 days ago. Can the council please consider implementing a response time frame for responding to public questions asked through this forum, such as committing to providing a response within 30 calendar days? Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Elliott. And the questions were received, I think, a little bit earlier today. So they are going to be taken on notice, and as outlined earlier, they will be published on an agenda and sent to you as well. But I just wanted to note for the record in relation to your second question, sorry, your third question, and we will give you a proper response about whether council can commit to a timeframe. But I just wanted to note, just for the record, that in the 3 months between September to December, we received 59 public questions during public question time, and that was up from 7 questions that we received in the June to September quarter, and 7 questions in the quarter before that, the 3 months before that. So some of the 59 questions that we have received in that most recent 3 months are quite complex and require a significant commitment of officer time. I'll also note that 37 of the 59 questions were asked by 2 individuals. Thank you, Ms. Elliott. Okey-doke. So if we could also note the responses to 2 public questions received previously. So item 5.2.
Lord Mayor.
Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Alderman Barakis. All those in favour to receive and note those 2 responses. Any dissent, sorry? No dissent, that's carried unanimously. Item 6 is petitions. Are there any petitions that have been received, CEO?
No, Lord Mayor, not this evening.
Okay. Supplementary items. I don't think there are supplementary items, CEO. Is that correct?
That's correct, Lord Mayor.
Great. Item 8 is indications of pecuniary or and conflicts of interest. Would anyone like to indicate an interest in any of the items appearing on the open council agenda? There being none, we move on now to City Planning Committee. Council is now acting as a planning authority. And I'll pass over to Deputy Lord Mayor for item 9.1, 3 Greenlands Avenue, Sandy Bay.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So this is a retrospective application in relation to a replacement of a roof. So it was Marseille tiled roof, ridge capping and decorative finials, which has been replaced by a colour-bond roof. So I'll move the item as per recommended from committee for approval.
Seconded by Alderman Briscoe.
Lord Mayor, as I said, this was a retrospective approval or a retrospective application for approval in relation to this a replacement roof at 3 Greenlands Avenue. So it was a terracotta tile roof and re-roofed by Colorbond. Work was undertaken without a planning permit. There were no representations during the advertising period, which is interesting. The officers have recommended for refusal, but this was overturned by committee. The recommendation for refusal was based on heritage grounds, but it was felt that in this situation, given something, if you like, falling through the cracks, it was taken off the Tasmanian Heritage Register, but still on the council's register. Now, there's really no excuse for not knowing if your house is listed in a heritage area and your responsibilities. However, the committee did have some sympathy in relation to the damage that had been caused through water damage, and have recommended that it be approved subject to conditions.
Further discussion on this item? There being no discussion, I will see if there's any dissent to the approval of that. Is there any dissent? No dissent, that's passed unanimously. Item 9.2.
9.2 is 199 Macquarie Street, alterations to car parking. I'll move the recommendation for refusal, Lord Mayor.
Seconded by Alderman Barakis.
Lord Mayor, this again is a retrospective application, but rather than 0 representations, there were 6 representations concerned about this parking and access. At 199 Macquarie Street, there is existing parking. So I think there are 36 car parks at the bottom of the driveway. And what we're looking at today is 6 car parks on the side of the building. So the 36 or 38 at the 38 at the back of the building were approved. the 6 on the side of the building, which is reducing the access, are the problematic ones. So the committee agreed with officers after some discussion that this should be refused, partly because of safety, walking down there, and also for any sort of emergency vehicles. So move the recommendation for refusal.
Further discussion? There's no discussion, so I will see if there's any dissent to that being refused. Any dissent? Okay, no dissent, that's passed unanimously. Item 9.3, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is a partial demolition alterations and extension at 82 Mole Street. It's for approval, subject to conditions. I'll move that.
Seconded by Alderman Barakis.
Lord Mayor, this is quite an interesting heritage building, which, well, it has a fairly interesting past, has had various, you know, it's quite a prominent spot near the corner of Mole and what is, I imagine, Goulburn Street, Mole and Goulburn Streets. So the application is for partial demolition and alterations, and certainly the representations, there being 7, were concerned about the extent and what actually partial demolition actually meant. Having said that, other concerns that were raised was the extent of the addition, the fact that some of the heritage elements would be removed, the use, was it going to be used for visitor accommodation, and neighbours had concerns that it might be, how the common area, the winter garden, would be accessed, and there were stormwater issues as well. I think the committee will probably agree that there was quite an interest in getting a good outcome from the applicant who provided a deputation, as well as from those hearing those concerns that were raised by representors, and subject to conditions. This was recommended for approval by committee as per the officer's recommendation, because some of the issues around access to the winter garden, keeping some of the heritage elements were like internal elements, and overlooking was reduced by some minor amendments to the plan. So in all, it's seen to meet the performance criteria of the planning scheme. So I'll move that, Lord Mayor, as it is.
Further discussion? No discussion. I'll put that, see if that's, sorry, I'll see if there's any dissent to that being approved. Any dissent to the approval? There being none, that's passed unanimously. Moving on to item 10, monthly planning statistics.
Yes, I'll move that these be noted, Lord Mayor, and just make the comment that there were 38 permits in January 2022 and 2021 comparisons, slight increase from $8.7 million to $9.2 million in value, and there's roughly slightly lower value overall in that year to January, the end of January. So I'll move that be received and noted.
Seconded by Alderman Barakis. Any dissent to the receiving and noting of those? No dissent. That's carried unanimously. Item 11, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, I'll move the monthly building statistics for January.
Second by Councillor Harvey.
And just note that for the period 33 of January, for the month of January, 33 permits were issued to the value of $13.3 million. And you'll note in the report that there was one major project, which was 66 Burnett Street, where there was stage 4 additional 3 units on level 5 and 5 units on level 6 to the value of $3 billion. Again, quite a buoyant market, as we're well aware in relation to that, to the current market, and this is reflected in these figures, Lord Mayor.
Further discussion? No discussion of, is there any dissent to the receiving and noting those figures? No dissent, then that's passed unanimously. Item 12 is city events and activations. So Councillor Sherlock is an apology, so someone might need to move that or speak to it briefly if anyone was on the committee, just to explain it to the public in particular. Any members of the committee who attended?
Lord Mayor, I'll have a go.
Yeah, city events and activations.
Lord Mayor, if anyone wants to check out the Community and Culture and Events Committee agenda, they'll see the long list of events that are in the pipeline coming up over the next few months. There's quite an impressive list of community activation and events that the Hobart Council will be running. So I'm very happy to move the item for approval.
Seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. Any discussion? No discussion. Any dissent to noting this? No dissent. Okay, we'll move. That's carried unanimously. Item 13 is Economic Development and Communications Committee. I'm not sure, Alderman Thomas, did you want to speak to this, or would you prefer the CEO do?
No, look, I'm comfortable in terms of the first, and certainly the CEO might want to jump in on the second. The first relates, item 13 relates to the continuation of a long-standing support structure established inside council under Director Short much earlier in the pandemic period. It's actually valuable in terms of it will support the activity in 14, item 14 as well, because over 700 businesses have been assisted and connected with during the period of the pandemic. In this particular case, there is also almost like the concierge system that the CEO has brought in terms of planning. There is also a ready help line for people in terms of the economic development area. And the most important thing is whatever support council gives can obviously be a lot less than the state and a lot less than the federal support. So it's important that we don't duplicate effort in that respect. But it is very much, and again, taking on your point about the public knowing what these agenda items are, there is a very detailed report sitting in the Economic Development Committee meeting of a week or so ago, and the public would be very valuable to have a look and see the various engagement protocols that are taking place, and I think it's been well worked.
Further discussion or questions? No further discussion. Any dissent to this item? No dissent, that's passed unanimously. Item 14 is City of Hobart Community and Industry Roundtables, another report from the Economic Development and Communications Committee.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Alderman Thomas.
All of those. Thanks, Lord Mayor. Effectively, I'll put that item up, ask for it to be seconded before I speak.
Seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you. This is the new strategic plan roundtables, and the CEO has done a lot of work since her arrival, meeting with various industry and business and community people. And this is a critical aspect to these forums working well. The forums will in many cases represent sectors, so that we actually gather as much common information as possible upon which we can base a new strategic plan going forward. I'd like to pass, with your approval, Lord Mayor, to the CEO to comment further on this, but I know there's a lot of work being done identifying the correct parties.
CEO, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and also to Alderman Thomas. Just by way of background, sort of building on Alderman Thomas's points there, just that this really does sort of commence our formal consultation process to develop a new economic development strategy. So the first phase of consultation is occurring in March as part of the roundtables, and we will be inviting sector representatives, as Alderman Thomas has said, to meet with us as part of these roundtables. And at the moment, we're just compiling a state of the city sort of report that will essentially be used as a background paper to inform discussion. So we'll be providing invitations as soon as we can to industry leaders over the coming days, and looking forward to a broad-based consultation, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? There being none, I'll see if there's any dissent on this item. Any dissent? No dissent, that's passed unanimously. Item 15 is the council policy review. Alderman Zuko, did you want to move this one? Sorry, committee chair.
Lord Mayor, I wasn't at the committee meeting, but I'll move the item. There's a number of changes in there, predominantly it has to do with the words the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer, Kinyani Mountain. There are some minor changes and amendments in respect of it. And I will move the item and reserve my right to speak.
Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded. Any discussion? Hands up. Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, most of it's just minor amendments. I suppose the page 37, I'll just get to it on my other screen, just if you hold on so I can correctly quote it.
Sorry, on the agenda is page 37.
Yep, 37. And I think the numbering there for that additional item should be 3 rather than 2 crossed out. Have I got it right? Yeah, on my it comes up as 2 crossed out and it should be 3. But anyway, I think that's just a typo. Yeah, look, I'm a little bit concerned about this. If we use the petrol allowance, we have an accounting mechanism. We have a limit. If we over subscribe to the limit for the petrol allowance, for example, we pay it back. And I've done that a couple of times in the last couple of years. So we're not quite sure how much, depending on what vehicle, electric vehicle one drives, how much the charging will be. If it's a big one, it may be a lot more. And it may be if you use your vehicle a lot, you could be charging there every day. Being somehow one PowerPoint got installed, if more than, say, if all of us get electric vehicles, which I don't have any problem with people getting electric vehicles, except they're quite expensive, then we've got no means to account of the electricity used. If it's negligible, then we should put PowerPoints all around the city for all the public to use. We know it's not negligible because it will start adding up. If it's $20, then you could charge every day, and therefore, say 5 days of working, that's $100. My view is that ideally we should have a meter there, and even if the meter is only there for short term to get some idea of who's using it and how much electricity is being used. Or alternatively, is that people with electric vehicles go to our charging stations in the car park, and the closest one I believe is the Dunn Street car park just in front of the museum there. where you've got a number of fittings anyway. So whatever vehicle you have, the appropriate attachment can be plugged in. And there you have a system where the amount of electricity being used and also the cost to the city can be recorded. Now, I think as this is new technology, I don't think we should be handing out a benefit like this for free. I think we should be accountable like all our other policies. This is not like charging a mobile phone or charging your laptop. This is charging quite a major battery and if, as I said earlier, if it is a big vehicle with a big battery, then it could be mount up. Now, I accept the fact that one charge would be less than probably one fill up of fuel. But it really depends how many times you have to charge it. And I have no experience of that. I know the Lord Mayor has been using that PowerPoint a number of times, I believe, I'm told, and I've seen it myself. And at least another Alderman's partner has been using it. So all I can say is we need to, if we're going to have a policy of a free benefit to the city alderman, then it should be free for everyone in the city. If we don't, then I think, so I'm suggesting that we change the policy, that we, the wording there, and cross out the last sentence, and a meter is installed to note who's charging and how much electricity is used. So that's an amendment.
Okay, so amendment from Alderman Briscoe, delete the second sentence with addition of that an electricity meter be installed to monitor the extent of the benefit.
And yeah, there might be another way of doing it, but this is the one that I would say that we're familiar with, a meter, and one way to record who's using it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll, is there a seconder for that amendment? Alderman Barakis. Okay, I'll might just see the other comments first, if there's any other comments on other policies before I put that amendment. Councillor Dutta, I think, was next.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have a question with regards to the elected members' development and support policy. I don't have the page number, but the question is to do with the $5,000 for elective professional development and the $6,000 for international relations. Now, what is the rationale for us to arrive at that figure, considering at this point in time we are in a different situation altogether?
Is this something for the CEO or another?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I might ask our Manager of Legal and Governance to respond. I'm not aware of that detail, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Through you, Lord Mayor. Sorry about that. Through you, Lord Mayor. Look, the exact rationale for those dollar limits escapes me right at the moment. They were set some time ago and were the subject of sort of many reports and iterations of this policy coming before council. So look, I can't recall off the top of my head, but I guess what I would say is that there's no proposed change to any of those in this policy being reviewed at the moment.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. The fact that we don't have a detailed rationale, would it be prudent for us to delay this and look at the rationale and the opportunity given to us to put forth alternative arguments or options in the context of the pandemic we are in?
Is that I don't think that's really a question for Mr. Jackson. It's probably your call, Alderman, Councillor Dutta, about whether you'd like to defer those items or the entire item, or just wait. It may all be reviewed again within a few months, I think. CEO, I think I saw that this is coming back around again. Is it in July?
Correct, Lord Mayor, and it's certainly something we'd be reviewing heading into a new term of the council.
Thank you, Chair. Then I will wait and go along with it. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Thanks, Lord Mayor. I wanted to respond to the amendment with regard to the fuel policy. Is now the time?
Yes.
Alderman Briscoe said he wanted to see accountability for fuel use, and therefore we need to measure the fuel or the energy used to charge an electric car. So if we're talking about accountability, or if Alderman Briscoe wants accountability, then I'm assuming he completes a submission every time he drives, rather than just claiming 1,500 litres per year. So I'd like to move that all those who claim petrol need to use item 1, which is seek reimbursement for costs through the submission of kilometres claimed, rather than just get a free-for-all fuel card, which gives you $1,500 worth of fuel, regardless of what car you drive, whether it's a small car or a V8 or a truck. So I just think that's not fair. So I'd like to see that part 2, the 1,500 litres of fuel to be taken out of the policy. If we talk about giving free electricity to letting everyone in the city charge their cars, there's a huge cost for the installation. Alderman Briscoe suggested if the Lord Mayor or whoever else has an electric car gets it for free, then everyone should get it for free around the city. Well, if we all I don't take the fuel, but if those who take the fuel, should also be supporting giving free fuel to everyone around the city. So it doesn't make sense what Alderman Briscoe has said. And when we consider that the price of petrol now is the highest it's ever been, it's at $1.85 plus per litre. So each alderman's getting not quite $3,000 worth of fuel to fuel their cars. So I think it's time we bit the bullet and got rid of the fuel card. And if people need to claim reimbursement, then they should submit their kilometres claim. So I'll move an amendment that we drop the fuel card and that all councillors and aldermen need to submit reimbursement of costs for fuel.
Okay, so that's another amendment to remove. So it's only, so there'd still be item 1 of seeking reimbursement for petrol use.
Yeah, just I think $3,000 a year worth of fuel. That adds up. I think there's probably 9.
Thanks, Councillor Harvey.
9 aldermen, councillors.
You'd need a seconder for your amendment. So a seconder, Councillor Fox.
Lord Mayor, it's a foreshadowed motion, so you don't need a seconder until it comes as a foreshadowed amendment. There was already an amendment before you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, so that's the rules.
But also, if I could just finish off there, it makes no sense to put such barriers in front of people using electric cars. It's charged by a power point. We provide power points in other locations for bicycle charging. And following this line, suddenly we'll be having to meter bicycle charging on the deck as well. I think we all understand that it's a lot more beneficial to drive electric cars for the environment, and we should be encouraging it. And having a couple of power points, we don't even have a fast charger. It's just a couple of power points on the deck, on the parking deck, for a couple of cars to be able to trickle charge while they're sitting there, I think is quite reasonable. And I don't think we should go to the expense of setting up a meter, which the installation cost of the meter would probably outweigh the cost of the energy consumed in that power point, from that power point. Okay. So I don't support the amendment.
All right, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Look, it's in relation to this amendment put forward by Alderman Briscoe. I too am concerned about the message as a a city concerned about climate change that this motion does provide. It's really, or this amendment does generate. It seems to me that it's really put in a fairly negative way that it's been introduced, and I would really like to see, you know, where people have made the effort to move to e-vehicles or hybrids, that is really supported, rather than this sort of a punitive approach. I would have thought. Just in relation to the motion, or sorry, the amendment, in relation to the, I have a question.
This is the foreshadowed motion, is it?
No, sorry, to this foreshadow. No, to the amendment of Alderman Briscoe.
Okay.
And can I just have some indication as to any cost of putting in a meter? Do we know what sort of cost there might be in relation to putting in a meter, through you to the CEO?
Lord Mayor, through to you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Look, I'm sorry, it's not my area of expertise, and I would need to take advice on that. I can certainly do that as quickly as, you know, the next couple of days, but I would need to seek advice. I'd be guessing. I'm sorry, Lord Mayor.
And presumably, thank you, CEO. And presumably, this currently this PowerPoint, I think we're just talking about a trickle PowerPoint, is can be used by anybody who might want to use it.
CEO.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So my understanding is that people that are able to park on the deck, in other words, who are permitted to park on the deck, are able to use that. So that can range from elected members through to guests attending council functions and so on and so forth. That's my understanding, Lord Mayor.
Look, Lord Mayor, I suggest that we don't consider this amendment because there's a cost associated with putting in, and it might be a prohibitive cost for putting in a meter, and it's really, I think I'd ask Alderman Briscoe to withdraw this and to perhaps put it in a more positive light. So that's through you to the mover of the amendment.
Can I respond to that, Lord Mayor?
Yes, Alderman Briscoe.
The deputy didn't hear my opening remarks saying that I have no problem with people charging their electric vehicles. And also, I think there was a charge, and a particular charging device was added for the cost of around about 3,000 and was taken away because it was the wrong one. And the PowerPoint appeared at the cost of about 2,000. So that never went through council decision. Now, look,
Didn't have to.
Well, you're saying it doesn't have to, but a meter does.
I think
I mentioned that. I'm not going to withdraw the amendment.
I think, does that mean
it's a positive move? It's a positive move. It's not a negative.
Okay, so so no withdrawal.
No.
Next, sorry, Deputy, had you finished your contribution?
Yes. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. So next is Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I'll be supporting the amendment. I don't think this does need to be framed in a way that's negative or an attack or anything like that. I think it's pretty well established that as time progresses, we're going to see more and more people using electric vehicles. I wouldn't be opposed to buying an electric vehicle in the future. And I think that's generally the way things are going organically. At the same time, I know there's been, inconclusive. There's been different reports that have said, but it is a consideration that as electric vehicles become more and more prominent, we will see a different demand on the grid and other issues like that. And I think it's only, I think it's a bit simplistic to say, and as the agenda says, that this is just a small amount of power consumed and therefore isn't really necessary of consideration. Look, I'm sure if it's only a small amount of power, then it's not really an issue. But this is a matter of parity. I think, so long as council resources are being expended, it's only reasonable and fair that the those resources are logged appropriately. I think it's the same thing for those that are using fuel allowance, and the same thing for those that might be using a allowance for electricity to charge their vehicles. And if it's a small amount and the cost is very, very small, then I think that would be reflected as somebody might say, look, Alderman or Councillor A spent X amount of money on fuel, whereas Alderman or Councillor B, who use an electric vehicle, only spend a tenth of that in their costs because they're using an electric vehicle. I don't think it's a onerous thing. I don't think it's meant to reflect negatively, but as these things become more and more prominent, I think it's necessary that we include them in our policies, in our documentation, and I think it should be the same rules that apply. So, look, I don't support I don't support the foreshadowed amendment, which would effectively just place a onerous and I dare say deliberately prohibitive administrative cost on aldermen and councillors undertaking their functions. But I think, and I wouldn't support doing such an onerous measure for those using electric vehicles, but I think the resources that elected members use, whether it's petrol or whether it's electric, should be logged in the sake of transparency. And as Councillor Harvey says, I'm sure it's very likely that those costs would actually come back perhaps at a much lower level than fuel costs, and that will be reflected. I don't think, and I really don't think, and I'd like to stress that this isn't an attack. It's not a negative thing at all. I think it actually reflects the fact that council's acknowledging that this technology is going to be used more prominently. But in that, we need to make serious considerations in our policies for that. So, look, I'd be supporting Alderman Briscoe's motion. I'd say that it's only fair that those charges are metered. So long as, obviously, I'm sure we'll get advice at the appropriate time from council if that is practically difficult. But so long as we're able to do it, and I'm sure the technology exists, we should be logging that. We should be recording that, and just as we do for fuel allowances. But I don't think we should be going any further than that for either one. I don't think that would be fair for one user or another. And as time goes on and more people use EV vehicles, I would only expect that those records and metering would only become more and more relevant. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing for those that advocate for electric vehicles, as I think it brings in a more long-term, more sustainable outlook on these things. So, look, I'd welcome it, and I'd be encouraging everybody to support this amendment, and I would not be supporting or encouraging anybody to support the foreshadowed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Zirko.
Lord Mayor, I'm sure there's an election coming up this year. It quite obviously must be. Lord Mayor, we've actually discussed this time and time again over the 30 years that I've been on this council. I think what we all need to understand is, what does the Local Government Act say in respect of this? The Local Government Act is very, very clear that all elected members are entitled to reimbursement of expenses. When we've gone down the policy of whether it's a fuel allowance or whether it's a reimbursement of costs, or whether we're going to go down the track of having a log done, it went through the process that if we go down the log and we actually looked at the costs associated with that, the council could have been up for a hell of a lot more money than what was calculated with the fuel allowance. Be it may that at times petrol may go up and down, and there are some differing costs over a period of time, but not as much as what would happen if elected members actually had to log and go through the process of getting paid. Then there's a hell of a lot more work for our council officers, and start adding all those things up. That is why the general manager at the time with the officers came up with a series of plans which were up to each individual elected member, which is the one that makes it easier not only for the elected members but also for the council staff. One of the things when you go down and read the legislation is reimbursement of costs, and the council developed policies, but the policies we developed are not necessarily the true costs of, say, myself running a vehicle and using that vehicle for my use, and whatever percentage it is for my use as an elected member. because there is not just petrol costs that a vehicle goes through. There is petrol, there is tyres, there is leasing of a vehicle, and the list goes on. And all this was something that the general manager and all the officers took into account when they went through all of this. Now, it may seem small-minded or whatever have you of going down the track of, well, let's monitor the power charges of electricity. You know, the statements made, well, those people that are getting the electric vehicles are doing the climate change a very good, they're playing part in the climate change. I was actually the first elected member who had gone blank, but solar panels on my roof.
Yeah, I think it was solar panels, Alderman Zuko. I think we've heard this before.
Just one moment. Lord Mayor, did I interfere with anybody? And I would like an apology from the Deputy Lord Mayor on interfering when I was speaking, because I haven't interfered with anybody.
I think she was just trying to assist.
There was no need to clarify, Lord Mayor. I'm speaking. Now, in respect of that, I'm doing my part and I've been doing my part. So does that mean that I should get a discount on my office use factors that I have at home for my home office, unlike other elected members? Look, we're going down a path of what I consider something that happens in a kindergarten. Now, look, I believe that what Alderman Briscoe was trying to do is say there is a cost, and that cost should be allocated accordingly, like petrol allowance costs, like any other costs that we have, whether it's our laptops or whatever it is, in association with what we do. Now, maybe there could be a better solution to it if we know what the average cost of an electric vehicle is to charge, and the average cost per annum, and that cost fee is allocated to the respective aldermen that have those vehicles. I think that's probably what Alderman Briscoe was trying to say, because all elected members who don't have an electric vehicle will have a petrol charge across their vehicle, but those elected members who don't will have no charges across their vehicle. But there is some charge, whether it's $100 a year, $50 a year, or $1,000 a year. But I want to just close in this. I don't think it's appropriate that any of our partners or anyone associated with us is using our petrol allowance. I think, or petrol or electric cars, or charging themselves up. That's inappropriate as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks, Alderman Zuko. Councillor Coates.
Look, thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, very quickly, I think Alderman Zuko sort of made a few pertinent points there, but, I mean, for what it's worth at the outset, if I was setting the rules, potentially I'd look at not having allowances. It's a lot easier to manage. You don't have this argument about what isn't included in terms of allowances and what they should and shouldn't reimburse you for. But Alderman Zuko is correct. It's actually set by the Act, and the council officers, I think, are very fair in administering that and saying, look, it is reasonable that in the doing of your duties, you incur costs, and it is appropriate and entirely appropriate that the City of Hobart cover those. But part of that covering of those costs is the transparency aspect of reporting it, and that's what happens. That's what the fuel cards are there for. It's administratively an effective way of doing it. It's appropriate in terms of reflecting the Act, which says that you are entitled to get reasonable costs reimbursed, but it's also transparent and trackable and open. And look, the reality is technologies have changed, and the City of Hobart appropriately now has the ability for cars to be charged. And this is something that is going to happen. There's a time in the not so distant future where all 12 of us will have electric cars, and people will appropriately say, well, what are they not reimbursing for travel costs? Who's paying for that energy? And it is an energy cost. And so, look, I think Alderman Briscoe's motion, the amendments before us, is entirely sensible, and it's in keeping with that principle. I mean, ultimately, we know that there is a cost involved, there's an energy cost involved, and we know that the City of Hobart is covering that. What should be done is it should be open and transparent. It's not wrong. It's entirely appropriate. It's reflecting what's in the Act, and I think the officers have done the right thing in installing it there, because ultimately the modes of transport have changed. But we just probably need a slight update to our policies to do so. And so I find myself supporting the proposed amendment.
I can see the hand up again from Alderman Briscoe. Is that a question, Alderman Briscoe?
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I forgot to take it down earlier.
Okay. Alderman Sexton.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. I won't be supporting either of the amendments. For all the reasons that Alderman Zuko explained, we went through this literage versus claims argument quite extensively a number of years ago, and it was going to cost much more money if people had a per kilometre or took into account all the costs associated with the purchase of their car and servicing of their car, etc., plus the administrative costs when added onto that, we're going to make it ridiculous. So that's why we came down to the 1,500 litres of fuel, and everybody's agreed to that for years, and it's worked quite well. So I won't be supporting that amendment. I also won't be supporting the amendment for the use of or for metering the electric charging as it stands at the moment. I bought an electric car. I've installed my own fast charger in my own property, so I don't need to charge anywhere else, and I won't be charging it anywhere else other than on my own property. The fast charger that I've got, which is a single phase fast charger, takes about 6 to 8 hours to charge the car for 400 kilometres. If I had a 3-phase charger, it would take a bit less than that, maybe 5 or 6 hours to fully charge to 400 kilometres. I also have a trickle charge cord, which I did use before the fast charger was installed. It takes about 16 to 18 hours to charge. So I don't see anybody leaving their car plugged into to an ordinary plug in the council car park for 18 hours in order to charge their car. And if they do that, it's probably going to be enough charge for 400 kilometres. So they won't be doing it every day. They won't be doing it every week. They'll probably be doing it once a month unless they have huge amounts of travel each day. I would support metering. I would support the installation of a fast charger, and I would support metering a fast charger, because that's a different kettle of fish altogether. And many of the fast chargers have meters, but to meter the trickle charge, I think my electrician worked out it costs 45 cents to charge my car, trickle charge. So now maybe at different times of the day it takes it costs more than that. But at the end of the day, to waste money putting a meter on an ordinary plug to trickle charge a car when it's going to take 16 to 18 hours to do so, in my opinion, is ridiculous. It's a waste of money. I do, however, support a fast charger. It cost me $3,000 to have it installed. It would cost less than that for the council, given that there's already wiring to a particular position. I think the one that I bought was about $1,400 for the unit. To have a unit with a meter would probably cost a bit more, maybe $2,000, but it would be worth it, because people could genuinely charge their cars from up to the 80% recommended charge level in 3 or 4 hours, and it would be useful to see what the metered cost of that was. But as I said, I'm certainly not going to support metering trickle charging from a PowerPoint. Thanks.
Councillor Harvey, have you got a question?
Look, Lord Mayor, just a comment to say, had the other speakers spoken before Councillor Briscoe, we might have had a better discussion here, but I think there's been some good comments. Thank you. No,
we're not taking general comments. Okay.
Mayor, I wonder if I could. Oh, sorry. I'm quite willing to change my amendment with the approval of the seconder, and I think the seconder was Councillor Dutta. So I wonder if I could suggest that that the meter gets installed once there's is it called a fast charger, Alderman Sexton? Yeah, once a fast charger is installed. And
okay, so that would be adding the words fast charger installed.
Yeah, once a fast charger is installed.
So who was the seconder of your, I can't remember, sorry.
Alderman Dutta. Sorry, Councillor Dutta.
I think it was Alderman Baracus.
Oh, sorry.
That as well.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Lord Mayor, sorry to interrupt, but may I just ask Alderman Briscoe to just give incision, once or if a fast charger is installed, we may never do it.
Yes, it assumes once and if a fast charger, yes.
I'd support that.
Are you happy with that? Okay.
Yes, Amy.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to respond and to some extent agree with the points made by Alderman Sexton. Now, firstly, I think with regards to the allowance, it will become very cumbersome and it's going to be an administrative overload, as we have heard from Alderman Zuko and others. And so therefore, I will have difficulty supporting that when this has been argued and debated at quite some length and for the staff to come to this conclusion. And I think for me to keep a log and put everything down, it's really going to be an overload of administrative duties. Secondly, with regards to the metering, I think we are just somehow or the other rushing this along without any evidence or facts presented to us. I would like to, in fact, while I accept the principle, if there is a double dipping on this, people use the charger plus the fuel as well, and we don't know the exact cost because one is reported and the other is not, I would be more in a position to support this, provided there were facts and figures and evidence presented to me. Thank you. So therefore, I will have difficulty supporting it.
Okay, so I just wanted to check with Mr. Jackson, actually. So I think we've obviously got a motion, an amendment, and then there's a separate amendment which is dealing with a separate part of this motion. So I presume that I'll put the first one, but the second one is not dependent on the first one passing, or it's just an additional amendment. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's correct, Lord Mayor, through you. They're two interdependent or independent amendments, if you like. So if the first one, irrespective of what happens with the first one, it would be open to you to seek a seconder for the foreshadowed amendment from Councillor Harvey and then put that one as well.
Sure.
Could we hear the amendment, please?
Yes, so the, Mr. Jackson, have you got that? I've got that instead of the second sentence, that the second sentence be deleted and replaced with something that says something like an electricity meter be installed to monitor and report on usage if a fast charger is installed.
Yes, Lord Mayor, that accords with what I've got.
Okay. Now, before I put that, I just want to see if there's any other amendments or any other parts of this report. Oh, sorry, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, I just wonder if I could perhaps foreshadow something after we've had quite an extensive debate, and this is coming directly off that. If I can foreshadow a motion that we ask the CEO to consider to cost out the reinstatement of a fast charging PowerPoint as Alderman Sexton has suggested, with a meter.
I think that's separate, is it?
It's a foreshadowed motion.
Okay, foreshadowed motion after this item. All right. So is there anything else on the policies? There were other policies. Any other comments or foreshadowed amendments to any other policies in this?
Lord Mayor?
Yep. Councillor Harvey.
Since the amendment only talks about keeping a record once a fast charger is installed, I think that's fine because eventually we'll all have fast well, everyone will have an electric car and we will be using fast chargers everywhere. So I'm happy to support that now. And I'm also happy to withdraw my foreshadowed motion, even though I think you should all hand in your fuel cards. But I'm happy to withdraw that foreshadowed motion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harvey. Okay,
The old fella comes to assistance of the council yet again.
Any further amendments to any of
You
the
did
other
have a slight
items?
influence, Marty.
Sorry, Councillor Harvey, please. Okay, well, I'll put the amendment by Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Alderman Barakis. Is there any dissent to the amendment? There's no dissent. That's passed unanimously. Now, I'll put the substantive motion, which is that all of those other amendments to the policies be approved as well. Is there any dissent to all of those other policies?
Lord Mayor, normally I could summarise, can't I? But I won't. It's all right.
Oh, sorry.
All I can say is, look. You know, sometimes all elected members need to understand that where we've got to with anything, there's been a process. In my 30 years of being on this council, I've been through that many processes in respect of whether it's a reimbursement of costs and everything like that. So there are many reports that sit on the shelves of the Hobart City Council, which will provide us with all the answers in respect of why we've got to this stage. I understand we're going forward, and I really appreciate that we've all worked with Alderman Briscoe to find the best solution towards going forward with electric vehicles.
Okay. Thanks, Alderman Zuko. So I'm now putting the substantive motion on all of the policy changes. Is there any dissent? No dissent. That's passed unanimously. I'll now ask Deputy Lord Mayor's got a foreshadowed motion.
Yes, thank you. I move that the CEO investigates and costs the installation of a fast charger with meter on the parking deck.
Seconded by Alderman Zuko.
And Lord Mayor, I suppose, I mean, we could just go ahead with this, but I think it would be prudent, given the discussion, to have that costed.
Okay, I can see Councillor Dutter's got his hand up. Did you want to speak to this, Councillor Dutter?
No, Lord Mayor. It was just a question I had with the other, some other points with the policy that we are discussing. That's all.
Sorry, I've now moved that substantive motion and it's been passed. I didn't understand that you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Harvey, did you want to speak to this one?
Yes, Lord Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support this as it is. However, I don't want us to get into a position where something that's operational, like installing electric car chargers in appropriate locations as we go forward, need to come to council. It's an operational matter. So I'm sure that the CEO would have got on with the job at some point of getting a fast charger that's appropriate to all the vehicles that we use installed. But happy to support it for now, but I don't want this coming back to us every time there's going to be a charger go somewhere.
Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I had a very similar point, interestingly, with our friend Councillor Harvey there. The charging station in Dunn Street's actually got 2 fast charger connections. Apparently there's a European connection. I don't know what kind of car Alderman Sexton's got, but there's another one for a Japanese type car. So if we do get a quote for a meter and a fast charger, which I think it seems very appropriate to get that installed, or the cost of it, I think we have to have it for both systems. Because I think in Tasmania, as probably Lord Mayor knows, because the fast charger that was installed there was taken out, that most electric vehicles in Hobart, at least, are the Japanese model fast chargers. So it's just that we should have a connection for both. It's more of a technical thing. And perhaps if I just ask the CEO that is taken on board. It doesn't have to be in the motion. Is the CEO nodded there somewhere?
I think,
Yep, thank you.
yeah. Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I agree. I'm glad that the Deputy Lord Mayor said what she said, because I was toing and froing a little bit until it was sort of re-clarified that this is just for reporting costings. I think, whilst we might very well be at a, moving towards a stage where a large number of people using electric vehicles, and I support that, spending a potentially large cost in implementing them in the Aldermanic car parking bay for the small minority of people that use it, I think I wouldn't be necessarily supportive of on the spot today. But given that it's a report and it's costing and it'll be considering all those things, I'm perfectly comfortable with the motion. Just without wanting to start another argument or debate, I just want to touch on one thing that Councillor Harvey mentioned. I do broadly agree with what he said. I don't think we should be routinely getting into the weeds on what should be operational matters, and especially if this starts becoming a broad policy. We shouldn't be discussing every single time a charger pops up whether or not we want to support it. I do think that that's somewhat different when we're talking about stuff that has bearing on aldermanic entitlements. I think we do need to ultimately be responsible for those things. But broadly, I would 100% agree. Whenever council's looking at putting in a charger at any location, it shouldn't be coming to us every single time. It should be part of a broad policy. I do think that it's somewhat different in regards to the Aldermanic Bay. I think we need to take a personal responsibility for that sort of stuff, and I think the same that goes the same for fuel entitlements and phone entitlements and all those other things. I think that is one thing that, for better or worse, we do have a responsibility to discuss ourselves and to wear the burden of ourselves. But broadly, I completely agree with him. But other than that, Lord Mayor, I'll support the motion.
Okay, thanks for that. Alderman Thomas, you've got your thumb up. Is that to speak? You need to be off mute.
Yeah, my computer is actually being undemocratic tonight. It keeps knocking the hand out. Look, I just think it is important. We are dealing with a different issue here because, from my understanding, from memory, the meters in the public car parks do have a cost. I mean, whether it's $20 for 2 hours or whatever it is, there is a cost to use those meters. So if we suddenly have a free meter, fast charging meter sitting on the aldermanic deck, of course it's different. And that's why I totally agree with the just recent speakers that we do need to, it would have needed to come back to us because it's an entitlement that a lot of us will end up using. I think the discussion's been really good. It's come out well, but we are not talking a same situation. It's not just an operational issue because there is a cost to the public, and suddenly we're going to have this charger, which ultimately, depending on how many people of the public learn it's there, and they will come and use it, we'll probably have other protocols we'll have to have in relation to that particular charger. Otherwise, why would people bother going into a car park to use one that they're going to be charged for?
Thanks, Alderman Thomas. Okay, so I will see if there's any dissent to that motion. No dissent, that's passed unanimously. We've now moved on to the closed portion of our meeting. If someone could move that we move into the closed. Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Alderman Barakis. We will now, is everyone, any dissent to moving into the closed? No dissent.